I'll try to skip some slides because the benefit is the discussion and not that much the presentation. So the cardiothoracic surgical hand and brain is intended to become a project that is preferably global, or at least European. Rapid creation of deliverables, not getting into conflict with different nations are doing, upgrade the higher quality e-learning products, integrate the sciences of learning, integrate them with information and communication standards, use all the possible resources from every possible country, if possible in all domains, existing to be integrated and to be created resources, basing on some kind of a learning management system and have a platform. And of course, a translational interface with the science of learning and of course the science of business management. I consider a trainee, with all due respect, a product, and we have to create a different product from that base product. And that is a production process. That must be perfect, that must be within the time criteria, that must be within the budgetary criteria, but most of all, it must become a better product. So the fact of taking business approaches does not show any lack of respect, on the contrary. So the first project we're trying to set up is the cardiothoracic surgical brain. So as Chris has very well shown us, Chris Munch, the first speaker, we have to use educational objectives, not base education on a number of years, but based on objectives. And how to make these objectives. I can sit alone for the next 20 years and come up in 20 years with a list of educational objectives. I can get 5 people and maybe we can have it done in 4 years. And we're very lucky that, in fact, as Chris has just shown, there is a group of people who have done this reflection. So if our project is to use whatever is best available in any country, the trick is to use what the British have done. They have a brilliant project, and as you can see, it is 2010 has the last upgrade. I went into reading that, and I can tell you from Belgium, certainly, I'm definitely the one who has gone through your ESCP. Every single word, every single line, I have looked at it. It's a little bit depressive, in all reality, and when I applaud Chris for a lot of his work, and nearly all his work, seeing the list of 212 pages of educational objectives forces the residents to jump into the talk, and we don't want that because we want them to become good surgeons. So what I've tried to do is use the same content which they have made and not change anything to that content, but bring it into a different format. And the format I have used is the personal brain. It's a project. So as you can see, we've called it CTSNet Brain, and these are all the elements as they have defined it. What they have made is a whole list. What I have made is transformed that into a tree. It's now a living tree with all kinds of branches. If you navigate through that tree, you will only see the last 4 branches. So we're not going to fed you up with 2,000 branches. It's only the last 4. And what we have tried to do at least, is when one educational objective can be retraced in one branch somewhere later, and the same educational objective can be retraced in another branch, is to use the same and link it together. So that basically now we can guarantee that, as an example, blood transfusion and blood products, how it comes there, in whatever link it is made, you can always make sure that it's only going to show up once. At the same time, the software has a very nice search engine, and you can really search through it. So that's the first part. Nothing new, only a different format. So the same work in a different format. User-friendly. Is it finished? Not yet, because I have to do this in my free time, which means in airports and on planes, and I don't travel enough to do that. We're at 85% of the work is done. So that's what is done, and I must say I thank very much the ESCP group for providing me the license to work with these elements, and of course they will get the software once it's finished. That's of course the whole thing to do. So now we have branches. That's the core which they have designed. Now we have branches. What we're lacking is fruits on these branches. And what are fruits? It's a picture, it's a video file, it's maybe an MMCTS manual, or it's maybe even one step higher is the e-learning modules that we would like to have, where you can definitely go into an assessment of the fact, knowing that the person has gone through that process. Perfect, because this program allows us to add this these fruits to these branches. So basically when the product will be finished, and for as much wherever we can find this information, we're going to hang on these branches the fruits that we can find in whatever language, and it's going to be your choice, what your educational process or your own choice to go into one tool or the other. You see some of the red dots. And so where are we going to find this information? We're going to find this in a wiki approach. You're going to deliver them. They exist, and on CTSNet, we do have a lot of these resources already stored. And you see an example of a fruit. You see here, this is a self-made. This is when I was trying to find it out. You see here on mitral valve repair, you see a number of different aspects, and you can see that there are some links available. You click on these links, and you can see here that on the anterior leaflet chordal repair, we have 2 fruits hanging on there. And these are, by example, 2 multimedia manuals. You click on that, and immediately they bring you. You don't have to search anything. Immediately the links will forward you to that tool. So this system is perfectly compatible with any other system, any other country that wants to design differently. If the UK and Ed wants to create different branches, that's all fine, but at least we make it so that one day they will all come back to anterior leaflet repair, and there we will put down together. And if you want to tag it for your scientific organization, that's perfectly all right. If you want to tag it with a different language, the system allows this to do that. And on e-learning, we've gone further into exploring the e-learning content. We've created a number of tools here. You see here 2 e-learning modules we have created, and immediately we want to address the global aspect of education. So the same module has been translated in English, French, German, Spanish, Portuguese, Dutch, Italian, Japanese, and Russian. It's been a brilliant exercise to have these interfaces working. So the intention is to use whatever resource in whatever language we can find them. I will skip that. So let's just close down the proposal on the cardiothoracic brain. If the scholar goes through a course, and exactly as Chris has said, you start from a learning objectives towards knowledge, and there is a educational pathway you have to follow. At this moment, students or scholars go to courses, but the intention is to put in front of these courses and beyond these courses e-learning modules. Of course, these e-learning modules have to use assessments, as you can see here, at every step of the educational process to make sure that indeed this learning objective is transferred into knowledge, apply the standards and the science of learning, and use the platforms in the portfolio that we have. CTSNet at this moment, and I will want to share that with you, I was the founder, and I've been working very hard. CTSNet is under attack, as usually different projects are under attack. I can tell you that the EACTS has decided to save the CTSNet at whatever cost. So a lot of the resources that we have through your services will use that to save our platform. And of course, then the next step is, what about the technicality and the technical aspects? And we thank very much also David O'Regan for his concept. We'll come to that. We need to build simulation training as the next step. So therefore, the next step is the project called the Cardiothoracic Surgical Hand. Again, we're trying to make this multinational, multi-organizational, and multi-domain, just as the previous one. I will not come back the Leonardo da Vinci Award. This has been done in perfect process. I was part of the final selection process, and I must say I highly appreciate the effort that Chris and David have done on this work. We are trying to stimulate simulation training worldwide through different formats, is by lecturing worldwide about this. I do this like once a week somewhere in the world, trying to create a portfolio of low-fidelity simulators. We'll show to that in the next sentence. Creating master documents. There is a master document created under Ed Verrier's supervision with the Joint Council. We have further worked on that document on one particular aspect and further explored. And of course, the intention is to share all that so that we really get to handbooks of technical training. Simulation training for most of you is a little bit strange, but that is because your life is not dependent from it. I can tell you that the gladiators, they used a palum that is twice the weight of the normal sword. If a surgeon's life would depend from their simulation training, I am convinced they would do a lot more of it. I will skip that. Yes, we are proposing not high-level, high-fidelity simulation training, but really going down on the scale, try to avoid any format of organic and high-fidelity simulation training, because there are massive advantages, but even more dramatical disadvantages, ethical consideration, limited availability, anatomical differences, and potential risk of infection. So we try in our concept, as the science of learning tells us, to go away from that. So there's only two things left over. It's virtual reality. Very expensive, limited availability. It is indeed reproducible and standardized, but here we're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars. If you go, those familiar with the Norderstedt plant in Hamburg, they know that it is possible to create, but then we all have to go to Norderstedt. So in fact, the intention of this concept is that we go to as low fidelity as possible, and the science of learning tells us very well that on certain conditions, this is a very performant model. We thank very much the Ethicon for sponsoring us with this project. I can tell you that we had 6 brilliant submissions of simulators yesterday. I can tell you they blew our mind apart. I was very thankful to Mr. Sadaba and Ed Verrier, together with a number of colleagues, to evaluate these seminars and to elect the first simulator award on coronary anastomosis. For next year, we are planning in this concept for the Brazilian meeting an aortic valve replacement simulator, and we are inviting the scholars to submit for the Brazilian meeting a simulator for aortic valve replacement, and for next year at the EACTS meeting a mitral valve repair. This is going to be very challenging, but we know that the wiki aspect of training, we know that you guys are much cleverer than we all think. I will skip that. We're setting up, in addition, not just trying to commit the scholars to simulation training, but also actually setting up simulation training, sitting on our knees with them. I've done that 4 hours this morning. I'll continue to do that 4 hours this afternoon and tomorrow morning. And we're setting them up in all different places this year and on different places. We had a brilliant simulation training with 32 scholars in Bloemfontein for 2 days. And what was interesting was that those that were present the first day, they came back the second day. There were 32 scholars. They all came back the second day. Some were senior surgeons who understood now that's how simulation training could help them. As an example, this is 800 anastomosis, what you see here, done by a scholar from Uzbekistan who came to me for 3 months. He had never done a single anastomosis. In 3 months' time, he did 800 anastomosis in low-fidelity simulating. Every single dot is an anastomosis. And, of course, the next step will be visible. And then after that training episode, I made him do a Lima to the LED, and the first anastomosis was absolutely perfect. So that's how we should train them. I'll skip that. And of course, as Chris has stated so much, we need to assess every single step of training, and we've therefore looked into the OSATs. There are 2 OSATs that are at this moment available in the science of learning. One is the FAN OSAT from Jim Fan, very active in Ed Verrier's project, and that's the one we're actively using for the moment. The reason is this is one that can easily be applied in simulation training. And what we're doing is we're learning the scholars to use OSATs. So one scholar is evaluating the other scholar using an OSAT, and the next anastomosis, it is inversely. So at the same time, we're learning the scholars to apply OSATs training. This is the David O'Regan, the same David we have talked about before, published in our European journal. It's a much more extensive OSATs. It's very good. It's a little bit different from the previous one, but it talks about awareness, relationships, planning, and announcing aspects that become much more important in operating theaters than in reality. Every single aspect of cardiac surgery can be simulated. We just need to use the wiki of our mind. One cannot teach a man anything. One can only enable him to learn from within himself. And I thank you.
We have to